So in this session, you're going to see a married couple, Jennifer and Alan, coming in to discuss some marital discord that they have been experiencing due to their daughter's behavioral outbursts at school and just not being able to connect on the same parenting styles and also not being able to communicate their emotional needs. Jennifer, Alan, welcome back. Just to kind of recap what we talked about in the first session. I know you both were coming in, some issues happening with your daughter, Lucy, who's been having some behavioral issues, some outbursts at school, and just not really acclimating to that new setting, and which have also kind of spilt over into your relationship, and it's really impacting just that staying connected and just staying on the same page. So today I did want to spend a little bit more time just kind of exploring where you all are at in terms of your relationship, some things, some insights that you can provide for me. And obviously I will share some stuff that we can definitely try to help resolve some of these issues that are coming up. So I'm curious as to know just what, if you could kind of dig a little bit deeper and tell me a little bit more about the issues that both of you have been kind of really struggling with. And maybe we'll start with Jennifer first.
Sure. Yeah, it's been difficult for us, just kind of learning to communicate. Lucy is very spirited. She's great. And she's going through a lot right now in school. And I just feel like she needs our support in this, and she needs to have us be there for her, as her parents. But that leaves Alan and I just on different pages. I'm really confident in the way that, this is how we need to approach her as her parents. And Alan just very stubborn and adamant that, his way is best. Okay. So.
Okay. I mean, we definitely came from different families. We talked about that a little bit last time. Mm-hmm. Just seeing the way that I grew up versus the way that she did. My parents split when I was younger, and so I was very independent, and I had to do things on my own. And I always wanted to raise kids that same way. And so I just feel that you're coddling her a bit too much. And now that she's 10, getting into that 5th, 6th grade year, she's got to figure it out. We've spent so much time leading up to this of just, her being our only child and getting away with murder. And, we went through a lot of seasons the past 10 years. When she was first born, the sleep was tough. And so that had a strain. And then I think we caught a groove. And now she's just, she's getting to the point now where she's old enough where I just want to nail it down.
Okay.
Right? You can't talk back to the teacher. You just can't do that. Right? And yes, a kid might have picked on her, but there's just no place for that. So there's a right and a wrong. And I think that needs to be handled correctly. And, teacher can't do it. We have to do it. Yeah. That's our role.
Yeah, great. So Jennifer, you said you guys want to be on the same page. So would you say, Alan is saying coming from different backgrounds, having different approaches to parenting, is that kind of what you mean by being on the same page?
Yes, definitely. I mean, he only has his experiences and how he has seen parenting done. And so I feel like he sees that's the only way to do things versus I wish he would see the way that I do things and want to know okay, is this something we can explore? Can we try? Versus he's really adamant this is the way it needs to be done. And so there's just a disconnect between us. And I get it, that's how he was raised, but that's just not fair, Lucy.
Now, have you both talked about these different upbringings and different kind of perspectives, or are you just now seeing it being played out after 10 years of raising your daughter?
I think we've definitely talked about it. It's just easier to talk about it, right? Not to actually practice it.
We've talked about it.
Sometimes I talk and I'm done. She processes for another week and I don't realize that she's not done.
He's just very one track, A plus B equals C. And that's how it is. Where I try to look at things from a lot of different perspectives and consider other things within the situation. And so I feel like we've talked about it, but we haven't been like really forced to address it and do something with it until now. Like the last couple of years, especially, she's gotten older.
Yeah, she's at a place now where it's just she's at a crossing the road. Right? Like, which way is she gonna? At least that's how I'm thinking. Maybe 10 is too young. I don't know.
I think 10 is too young.
I feel that she knows right and wrong at this point.
So have parenting styles for both of you been pretty consistent from when Lucy was born to those toddler years to now, as a 10-year-old? Has it been pretty consistent, or have you seen either of your styles change in a sense?
I feel like you've kind of always been this way. This has kind of been your approach.
I was going to say the opposite.
Okay.
I was going to say that I was easier on her than I would have liked to be growing up. I think if we would have hashed this out when she was 5, 6, that we wouldn't be at this point right now. And I think that's probably what's causing this maybe resentfulness that I have.
Okay.
Now we're just in the stage where we might be too far.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just too young to start. Any child needs that parental support, that nurturing, that acceptance, and just to be that safe place for her always. So to like just push her out of the nest so quickly, I think is going to create more problems later.
Okay. So you're trying to be proactive of what you're anticipating may happen.
Right.
If
right. Like
there was too many boundaries and things in place. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. Like if our parenting is just hard and fast, like this is the way you have to do it. I feel like when she's faced with challenges, I don't know. I want to give her that confidence to be able to explore other options, knowing like we're her safe place. If she wants to come back around and like talk to mom and dad about it, she can, versus like kicking her out the door and be like, you have to figure it out. Like, how are we being effective parents that way if we're not being supportive of her?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm hearing you. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that we had these ideas of what our family would look like, and we had these plans, and then Lucy came along, and it's like we are just catering to her now. And like we're not doing what we talked about doing. Whereas I think she is part of our family now. It's just become like whatever she wants is what she gets. And then in 7 years she's gone, and then what do we do then? You'll probably follow her to college for a while. Like I can just see you wanting to do that. Just latch on.
So this is very, I'm hearing you both say these very polar opposites of what you're wanting. And so as we know, and I know we talked about this in our last session, of we have to get on the same page, right? We have to figure out and work towards trying to identify what this can look like. And so I'm curious as to know, have you both always really, even before Lucy was part of your life, has your relationship always been in that area of, I don't want to say conflict, but in a sense of just having differing ideas of what family life will look like or what parenting looks like? Have you both have that always, or is this something you're seeing more and more of? Because I know both of you really emphasize that just the concerns and issues on Lucy's end at school and things have really caused you to reflect on this a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in a bigger picture, have you both always had these polar opposites of ideas, whatever it may be?
That's probably part of the overall issue, is that I'm very independent. I've always been independent since I was a teenager, and I had plans for my life. The plan was to get a wife, to have a family, but they're going to come alongside what I'm doing. So business driven, I'm going to take care of the family, get that stuff done. And I feel like you're a mom. And sometimes you're not even a wife. Like you're just a mom now. It's like, wow, that doesn't fit into my plan. And so it just that is definitely some of the tension that we have.
But do you agree that she is a mom?
She is a mom.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say I'm a dad too. Yeah. But number one is like the path that I'm on.
Okay.
And that's probably wrong, like as I'm saying, and it doesn't sound great, but I think that you are so much more in it's so much more about Lucy now than it is even about us. And I think that's caused a lot of our issues.
I mean, she needs our attention. Like she's crying out for our attention. That's what this acting out is. And so going back to your question though, Shah, like I feel like I'm a very go with the flow kind of person. So when we first got married, I kind of enjoyed that he took the lead on things, and he was like the lead for our marriage and the leader for our family. And I'm very easygoing. I'm go with the flow. I'm like, that sounds good. I can do that. I can adapt. And so I feel like I just kind of sank into that role of like, sure, that sounds good. We can do that. Because we were married for about 6 years before we had Lucy. Okay. And so like we were kind of in a rhythm where it was like, this is how we're going to do things. And like I was comfortable and good with you taking charge. And I feel like with parenting now, it's a different role than like husband and wife. Yeah. Now you're mom and dad. Yeah. Okay. And so
but you're both. It's not either or.
It's changed though. Like the way that we brought someone into the world. So
I did want to.
I'm not as go with the flow as I used to be, I guess.
So I did want to come back to what Alan was saying a little bit earlier. What did you hear Alan say when he was talking about that now this new mom role is kind of taking over? What did you hear really, Alan? What do you think he was saying there?
I mean, it sounds like he's saying that maybe he feels like I take this mom role more seriously than I need to, or I should, or I'm more of a mom than I'm a wife, maybe.
That's it. That's exactly what I was hearing him say.
And maybe that's true in some cases, because they're so needy when they're little. When they're first born, and they can't do things on their own. She's not independent. She can't walk. She can't talk. She can't feed herself. So like, I feel like I stepped into this like she needs me. Mm-hmm. Who else does she have if she doesn't have me? So there really wasn't an option for me to like 100% wear both hats as wife and mom. Like, how do you do that?
And that's a really good example of what parents go through. And so as we're talking about parenting styles, as we're talking about this connection between you two, this is where it becomes really important of identifying what are we doing to still maintain our relationship. And you're right, like that role is added to this role of husband and wife, right? And that husband and wife is not going to go away. That relationship, because you all had a relationship before Lucy was part of the picture, right? I understand as Lucy was born and obviously new parents, I'm sure there's a lot of anxieties, a lot of fears. You have a lot of new things that you're learning and you want to do everything right. And this is the first child, correct? Mm-hmm. And so, and that's very normal in just being a new parent. Mm-hmm. And so as children get older, it's very important to really identify what are our parenting styles and how are these going to change? Because how you're parenting right now may not look the same as when Lucy is 15 years old, right? They may not look the same because if you're still setting all the boundaries, imagine setting boundaries with a teenager. Yeah. Right.
She's told me that before. Like she's going to start. And I think that we have a good relationship now, Lucy and I. Like, it's not like I'm a huge authoritarian and like, I think that I'm a good dad. I think she's a good mom. I just think there's a little bit too much coddling and it leaves me to be the bad guy in a lot of situations. And so, I do see that, 5 years from now, like it's going to be a lot of doors slammed in my face probably.
So what do you think would take, and this is probably a question of what ifs, right? But something that we can definitely aim to implement in your life. But what would you like that to look like? What would you like this co-parenting or to bring both of your styles in? Because coddling and that emotional needs being met is good. Setting boundaries is good. So what both of you are bringing, there's good aspects to these. But we can say that there's maybe, when the coddling sometimes isn't needed, maybe boundaries are needed. Or vice versa, when boundaries aren't needed, more of that emotional needs being met, or that hugging, or just kind of that showing that you care, right? So where could we find that happy medium in terms of picking and choosing of what's working? Because there's something working from both of your skills that you're bringing in.
Yeah, I mean, she's taken care of.
I mean, I feel like I am more emotionally connected to her. Alan would say he's struggles with like empathy and like that emotional intelligence piece of like our well-being. And so I feel like having a girl that's, you know, she's entering that stage, like at the adolescence, she's about to be a teenager. Like girls tend to be more emotional. There's a lot of changes going on. And so I feel like what works for me in my approach is that like I am very emotionally connected with her. And I think that helps her trust me and feel supported. And my worry is that he doesn't have that with her. Because he's so like a rigid and these are the hard and fast rules with the boundaries. So I want that piece with our parenting to be present, like them being emotionally connected. So from you, I want you to be more emotional with her, like just be able to talk to her as like just one human to the other instead of like parent to child, like just connect with her.
Yeah. And I would say I don't love the way it is now. You know, that's why, you know, I'm not thrilled about the idea of counseling, but I think that this is good. Like, I think it's necessary to do. I don't want it to be like this polar opposite, good cop, bad cop. I don't want to be the authoritarian all the time. I don't want to be the back. Like, I would love for her to come to me, and when fun things happen, like, I want to do some of that too. Like, I don't want to coddle, but like, I would love to have those kind of connections with her. I think right now where I think that we're at is because you're not doing it, somebody has to. Otherwise, we're going to raise a terrible child. So I would love us both to just move in a little bit. You know, if you could be a little bit more strict with her and set her on her ways that way, maybe that would open the door for me to have more of that relationship.
I think these are really great things that you both are bringing up. And, you know, this is something I would like you to practice. Between now and the next time we meet, I definitely want you to practice more of this in terms of what is it that we both bring in. And don't look at this as we're both doing something wrong, right? We can say sometimes maybe it's on the extreme ends of things, but looking at what works that we can implement. And whether it's, you know, structuring it out on paper, talking about it every single night before bed. But this is where that connection, I think both of you being connected is going to help you become more connected with your daughter. And it's also going to help in the sense of, you know, I'm also wondering, as we're talking about Lucy having some of the behavioral stuff that's happening, how often are you guys really talking about these things around her? Or if you are showing that, hey, we're both kind of conflicted right now. Because a 10-year-old's smart enough to pick up some stuff, right? They're smart enough to know how mom and dad are communicating and things like that. So, or is this something that you only wait till you're behind closed doors and you have these conversations about them? Or is there experiences where Lucy's present for some of these things?
I mean, there's definitely moments where she's present. You know, we'll both make like offhanded comments about things that the other one says or does, you know, just kind of abruptly, like it's for the moment in the situation.
And I would go back to it's part of our life. Like she's part of our life. Like, I don't know if it's good for us to like pretend that everything's okay here and then go into the bedroom and argue. You know, I don't think we have screaming matches. We're definitely snippy at times. But yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe she's picking up on stuff.
No, and you made a really great point about you want to keep it real enough with her where she kind of understands. But I also, you know, creating those own boundaries for yourself. Like, hey, when we're upset, you know, you brought up a phrase earlier when you were like the resentments that are there. So the big thing that happens in parents is if there's resentments that are being settled from, whether it be personal reasons, before the child was born, whatever those resentments may be, we slowly start seeing those creep in when we're in high conflicted times in our life. So whatever you're able to do. And that's why, I'm glad that you have started therapy. I'm glad that you have started coming to work on you as a couple. Because I know you're getting some other professional help for stuff that Lucy's going through, but I think it's important for you both to maintain that togetherness and to really think about, okay, what can we do to model the positive behaviors? So one thing that always comes up when kids are having some behavioral outbursts, they're not really acclimating to other kids, or they're not, having a very stable social circle and things like that, which I know Lucy's kind of been struggling with. It's always, and, I don't want you to use this as like, okay, what are we doing wrong? But always look at it like, what can we do differently to, empower her to have a little bit more independence? I do agree, that I think that independence piece is something to really talk about between us three, and to talk about how we can foster that in your relationship with Lucy. But also, I think there needs to be this sense of togetherness and independence here as well within your relationship. Because I've heard you both kind of say like, this is what he does, this is what she does, which it should be okay, but also talking about, okay, how can we do this together? And so using that modeling and using just being able to be around Lucy and have those conversations, I think is going to be the biggest thing right now that's really going to help kind of find some normalized stuff within the home. Now, it's great to hear that you're not having like shouting matches or full-blown arguments, but kids are very, very receptive to everything that's happening around them. And so they can pick up those microaggressions. They can pick up that passive aggressiveness that may be coming up.
That's us, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sarcastic. I can admit that.
Yes.
But I think where you're at right now and, the things that you're able to do at home, that togetherness, but the bigger picture is how can we get on the same page of parenting? What kinds of questions do you all have, or what kinds of things can I provide a little bit more insight about in terms of whether it be, things you can try with Lucy or things that you both can try? What are some things that you may have questions on?
Why? Yeah, I have a question. Like when he does, react to her, whether like she's gotten suspended from school again, or like she's fighting with kids in the neighborhood, like he tends to react like in the moment, which like escalates the situation pretty quickly. Like, and then it becomes like this, she's slamming doors and things like that. And then I feel like I'm caught in the middle because I'm trying to like calm her down, but also tell him to like just relax. And so when those like heated moments happen and I'm like, oh, you both just need to stop. Yeah. Like what am I supposed to do? Yeah. Like in that moment. So this is a bigger kind of picture idea of not just what individually, I know individually for you is probably very stressing, anxiety provoking, probably internalizing a lot of stuff happening. But I would definitely say, have a conversation of what's really happening. So for you, talking to Lucy about, hey, these are the behaviors that are wrong, and fully communicating. And at times maybe treat her like an adult of, you don't want to coddle, you don't want to sugarcoat things like, oh, now you're trouble, you're being grounded. Actually sit down and talk. So there's this aspect of scaffolding that parents can definitely do. It's something that is used in like learning experience type settings. So it's to help teach new ways or new skills or new behaviors that a child can really use in whether it's school, everyday life. But for you specifically, I would say make this a family conversation rather than a Lucy and Alan conversation. Because again, you want to show that togetherness. You want to show that we're standing together on this. And it's not going to be that Lucy can argue with dad, run to mom, and everything's right. And that's what's been happening, where he ends up just pushing her away. So she comes to me, and then I get in this, between a rock and a hard place. And so sure. I want to know, like, how do I respond to him in that situation because she needs to cool down. Otherwise, like, you just can't approach her when emotions are high. Yeah. It's like she needs to calm down. Yeah. So, like, what am I supposed to say to him when, like, should we just like spend time apart? Or like, do you want me to say things like, we need to have a family conversation, even though...
Yeah, and this is where you have to get very creative with, talking just between you two of like, hey, what is the game plan? Mm-hmm. Right? Because if you're trying to diffuse a situation while Lucy is in a very escalated moment, I'm sure it's hard, right? And it's probably easier for you to calm yourself down than for Lucy to calm herself down. And so I would say use that opportunity rather than saying like, hey, let's all just take a break, use the opportunity. And maybe if she's responding to you, that would be your job there to be like, all right, I'm going to practice some coping skill right now to help myself calm down and and this won't happen overnight. This is going to be something that we can use. And this is where that scaffolding technique kind of comes in of we're supporting in a sense of I'm going to do this with you. We're also explaining and encouraging of why it's important, but over time, and this is where the conversations of the family needs to really happen. So when you're not in a very conflicted time, is having those conversations of like, hey, this is what we kind of want to try. And I know, you're seeing a therapist or Lucy's seeing a therapist. So it's always good to kind of collaborate of, okay, what kinds of things is she learning in therapy? And then so you can bring them home and really, really enforce those, or not enforce them, but really implement them on a daily basis. Now, you have to be okay with failure. So one thing when we're trying to change behaviors is, again, it doesn't happen overnight. It's something we have to, because we've learned those behaviors after so much time, we have to relearn new behavior. So which will take, because we have to, unlearn something and relearn or learn a new behavior, right? So that's double the time of what's happening. So you have to be okay with failure and allowing yourself, but also modeling that for Lucy to understand that it's okay. You can be frustrated right now. Nothing's going to happen. But the more we can practice this and the more you can normalize it at home, I think that is what the solution is. There's no quick fix. It's a matter of implementing them slowly and as you move forward. But again, having that togetherness and just kind of standing together on whatever the solution may be or whatever the consequence may be, that's where it's going to be important rather than having these polar opposites of parenting. And so I can definitely give you some resources on different parenting styles. And I think something that we'll incorporate more in our discussions as we move forward. But I think understanding those parenting styles and moving forward with how we can implement those more is going to be really helpful.
Yeah,
so I don't really, just a quick takeaway from what you said, what I'm hearing is I think it's good for us to have a plan because as we're in the middle of it, we're just going to go with emotions, even if I might not have a lot of emotion.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned scaffolding. I don't know what scaffolding is.
Yeah. So when we're teaching a new behavior or we're trying to kind of instill something new in the child, so for Lucy in this instance, you want to build on, so you're going to do support. So just remember the three things: support, structure, and encouragement. Okay. So what you want to do is you really want to support the idea of why they're feeling what they're feeling. So really listening to them, not saying like, oh, the reason you're in trouble is because you hit a kid at school. It's more so kind of supporting the idea of like, why was it important for her to hit that kid? Right. To really dig deep into, I'm here to listen. I'm going to support you in what you're saying. I'm not here to judge you, but I'm here to listen to what you're saying. And so that's where, again, then we're encouraging these new behaviors. So if you really look at just scaffolding, you're building on top of something, right? So you want to start at a basis and then you want to just go from there. So you want to implement, and then that's when you bring in the new behaviors. So that's where the structure is coming in. And so because you don't want to do those all three at once, because if you try to teach a new behavior while you're supporting and encouraging, there's going to be a lot of confusion that may take place. So you really want to start with one of the concepts of this. And so the first step is always, I'm going to support you. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to encourage you to try these new behaviors. And then we're going to structure a plan of how to implement these behaviors. And then you also want to look at, if you're watching your child, 10 years old, I'm sure she's still going to social settings and parties and stuff with you guys, right? So, always be very observant of what their kind of social setting is like, not the setting, but how they're just displaying the behaviors, are they being activated by another individual, or how they're kind of just behaving. So the more you can kind of observe, and I wouldn't say micromanage them in any way, like don't say like I have to watch you at all times and things like that, but just kind of observe of what you're noting. And the more you can kind of bring that into conversations, like, hey, this is kind of what I noticed and we should talk about this, not in a way like we need to talk about this is bad. So looking at how we're framing that. So really just building on top of, what we want to teach them, but also you want to show them. So that modeling piece is coming in as well. So again, with support and encouragement, we want to model those behaviors for them. So this is where you all have to practice, all of the behaviors you want her to, implement in her own life.
Does that make sense to you? I'm not very abstract, so I would like for you to give me something to do for next week.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, is there a specific
examples?
Yeah, I was going to say, is there like so if you could highlight a behavior that you have noticed Lucy exhibiting that you're really struggling with?
I feel like you struggle when she talks back to you and she gets an attitude. You are likely to kind of match that or mirror it. Like you call her out really quickly, and I'm like, okay, let's not.
It's not mirroring. It's disrespectful for her to do it to me. Right, I'm the parent, but I know what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. Well, her back talking, I would say,
I do
is
not
like a trigger for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be a good thing to start with, I think.
Okay. So back talking.
Yeah.
So again, my first step I'm gonna go to is, okay, how can we model a different behavior? Where do you think you would have the opportunity to model something? So the behavior that you would want to see is not talk back at all.
Just talk.
Smart Alec, which I guess I'm a smart Alec, so I guess I could probably model that.
He told you he was sarcastic, so it's probably
okay.
She gets it.
Okay. So what would you want Lucy to do differently?
Probably a little bit more yes sirs.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little extreme. Like that's maybe the top of the scaffolding example of like.
Well,
I think
clearly
we
I
start
don't
more
understand that yet.
I would say
more simply. I think.
Yeah. I would say don't go too drastic with what you're wanting. Okay. Kind of keep it in the realm of we want to keep it a little realistic. If she's hasn't called anybody sir her whole life, it's gonna be really hard to implement that in a 10-year-old, right? It is doable, yes, but you have to be really, really structured in what that looks like. But I would say if we're looking at having less of her talking back to you, do you explain to her why that may be disrespectful, or do you kind of talk with her about do you tell her why you don't like it?
No.
I don't think I probably have.
No, I don't think she really understands. She just sees like him react, and I think that's how she reacts back. And so, no, I don't think so.
So I would definitely, I think if we're looking at the modeling and scaffolding of this, you want to be able to, and so the first thing would be, observing if she's doing this in other settings, or is it just with you, right? So if you're noticing this in other settings.
I mean, we're getting some from the teacher, right?
Yeah, it could very well be like just authority. She's not that way very much with me, I would say.
Probably because she's not authority.
I also just speak to her a little bit more supportively, I would say. But teachers at school sometimes, just teachers she doesn't like.
No.
Just she's respectful to the teachers that she does like.
And so this is where those conversations, you can ask of her, and again that support aspect, that conversation. I'm curious as to know. I've noticed a lot of, and I don't want you to sound very sterile when you say like, oh, I've noticed that you've been doing this a lot, but in your own language, in a very positive, productive manner, is really just maybe if it's a casual conversation of, I've noticed that there's been a lot of just talking back, or just really looking at what are you kind of seeing. Or if she's talking back, and then you can pretty much just ask her like, do you see me or mom talk back to people, or just kind of calling them out in that sense, but again in a very supportive manner. You don't want to do it to antagonize,
right? Probably not when she's in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is where, again, you never want to do something when you don't want to make things reactive. You don't want to work in a sense of like, okay, we're conflicted right now, so we need to talk about it. It has to be normalized just on everyday basis. Right. And so one thing I would say, probably starting off with having these conversations, is really just being curious as to, hey, what kinds of things are you learning in therapy? You know, what kinds of things is your therapist sharing with you, or what are you learning, talking about? So that is where you can you want to have that connection, so then she feels comfortable sharing. Because now if you're saying like, hey, tell me everything you're doing in therapy, that's not going to work. Because then she'll be like, I'm not sharing anything with you, you know, if it's a very negative, aggressive manner. But I always go back to that modeling piece. You have to, you know, if you both are having a conversation and Lucy's sitting right there, even the slightest of like talk back is, you know, if, I don't know, prime example, if Jen is saying something and you're like, no, that's not true. You're probably right. It's probably not true. But what Lucy is hearing is like, oh, well, dad does it to mom all the time. Right? So this is where it becomes very intentional. I have to think about and it's tough. That's going to be the toughest part. You know, I'm not going to say it's going to be super easy, because now you're kind of changing up your whole dialogue. You're changing up your whole manner of communicating with Jen, right? Or just people in general. But you have to be really intentional about how we're doing it around Lucy. And so you just have to think about, okay, if I respond the way I want to respond, but I'm trying to teach her to not do the same thing, you know, maybe I'll respond in a more productive manner. And, you know, I think those are the small steps of where we need to start. But as we get more into our therapy sessions and as we talk more about this, it will become easier to kind of implement, because right now I know both of your minds are probably everywhere, as most parents are, of like, what should I do? I need something right now. And so those smaller fixes right now, I think, is that communication piece. And the first thing to really focus on is, how are we communicating these needs with Lucy? But most importantly, how are you two communicating these things? And how are we staying connected? And again, starting with that parenting aspect, like we need to be on the same page. And that's the biggest thing that I would like to start with as we get further down the road. But I want to bring up this aspect of, what can we do differently to talk with Lucy? What can we implement? And, you know, if we want to bring Lucy in for a family session, you know, I would love that. And I would love to just see how the interaction's like, and anything that I can share that would be helpful. But yeah.
Okay. I think he's scaffolding with us right now. Did I use that right? Is that what we're doing a little? Okay.
Yeah, just training you, right? Teaching
Okay.
you a few new things.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but yeah, I know parenting's hard, and it's definitely something that is an art, and there's no right way of doing something. It's just, you have to find what works for both of you.
Right. It's hard. It's been really stressful on us. So I really want to, for the next 8 years, really, until she's out on her own, really set a good pace for her and really be on the same page together. And so I'm really hoping that we're just not too far gone, and that she's not too far gone, that we can't kind of steer the ship back to where it needs to be.
You can. I think she's at this age where you're definitely able to find what's wrong with the communication, with just the connectedness, the togetherness, and implement these changes, and implement these, whether they be small changes, large changes. You know, you're at that place where we can work towards those solutions, and we can see those solutions happen. And I definitely encourage you all to, you know, keep thinking about the things that you are doing right. So as parents, that's the thing. You're always kind of critiquing, like, we did this wrong, you know, and I know, Jen, you brought that up in our last session. So I want you to focus a lot more on what's working. Let's do more of what's working, right? Rather than focusing on what's not working and working harder to find new things. But the more you can focus on what's working, that's what's really going to help. But
Okay.
I definitely, you know, thank you for coming in, and I look forward to working with you more
Yeah.
as time goes on.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. In this session, you were able to see Alan and Jennifer really talk through the issues that they're having. They're able to talk about some of the parenting styles that they bring to the relationship and how they raise their daughter, Lucy. You're able to see, we talked about how to use this technique of scaffolding to teach their daughter the new behaviors that they would like to model for them, and to bring into the household so she can exhibit those in the school. I was able to share with Alan and Jennifer how they could implement healthier communication styles when they're around their daughter to help model those positive behaviors.